I hadn't been up to Grandpa Earl's cabin in months, and the long drive from Chicago to the Appalachian backcountry always felt like stepping into another world, the air sharper and cleaner, the silence almost ancient. By the time my Honda Civic rattled up the narrow dirt road, dusk had swallowed the sky, and Grandpa was waiting at the door, still straight-backed at 88 though his eyes had gone cloudy. Inside, the cabin smelled of wood smoke, old pine boards, and coffee that never left no matter how much time passed. Over reheated venison stew and cornbread, Grandpa froze mid-bite, staring out the kitchen window at the lone pine tree in the yard, taller than I remembered. "She's still there," he said quietly, and when I asked who, he replied, "The girl, under the pine. The girl with green skin and white hair. Don't look her in the eyes, Emily. Promise me." His tone was so serious it erased my smile, and though I tried to laugh it off as an old ghost story, he leaned closer, insisting she'd been here longer than I'd been alive. After dinner, while he settled into his recliner with the Golf Channel murmuring in the background, I washed dishes and kept glancing at the tree, the shadows under it swaying slightly in the breeze. My mind tried to form a small figure there, but every time I blinked, it was gone. Later, in the guest room, I paused at the window that faced the front yard. The breeze had stilled, the yard motionless, an owl calling deep in the woods. Shaking off the unease, I closed the curtains, but as I lay in bed, Grandpa's words wouldn't leave me. "The girl with green skin, don't look her in the eyes." It didn't feel like the rambling of a senile old man. It felt like a warning from someone who had seen something real, survived it, and was still afraid. That night, after Grandpa had gone to bed and the cabin had fallen into that deep mountain silence, I sat on the old plaid couch with my phone and called my brother Mark. He answered on the third ring, his voice warm but tired, and I told him about the strange thing Grandpa had said at dinner, about a girl with green skin buried under the pine tree. There was a pause on the line long enough for me to think the call had dropped, and when he finally spoke, his voice was lower. "Last month, I came up to check on him," he said. "I woke up around 2 in the morning and saw him out there, digging under that tree with a shovel. He said there was someone buried there and he had to get them out." I asked if he believed him, and Mark let out a sharp breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "I don't know what to believe, but it's not good for him to keep talking about it. He gets unstable. Just don't encourage it, okay?" His words left a heaviness in my chest, and after we hung up, I sat there staring through the window at the shadowed outline of the pine, the branches swaying just enough to make it seem alive. Something about the way Grandpa had spoken earlier, the way Mark's voice had shifted when I brought it up, it didn't feel like they were humoring an old man's delusion. It felt like there was something they both knew, something they weren't telling me, and now I couldn't stop wondering what might be buried under that tree. It must have been close to midnight when I woke to a faint, irregular clinking sound, the kind of metallic tap that doesn't belong in the stillness of the mountains. For a moment I thought it was part of a dream, but then it came again, metal scraping against something hard, echoing faintly through the cabin walls. My chest tightened as I slipped out of bed, careful not to let the floorboards creak. The hallway was dark except for the weak glow of the moon leaking through the front window, and when I peeked out, my breath caught. Grandpa was outside, hunched over near the base of the pine tree, his back to me, the moonlight glinting off the rusted shovel in his hands. He was digging, slow, deliberate strokes, pausing every so often to lean on the handle as if listening for something beneath the dirt. The wind was still, yet the branches overhead seemed to shiver. I wanted to open the door, to tell him to stop, but something about the scene rooted me to the spot. He straightened suddenly, his head tilting as if he'd heard me, and though I couldn't see his face, I felt an awful certainty that he knew I was watching. Without a word, he jabbed the shovel deep into the earth, and the sound it made was wrong, a dull, hollow thunk, like metal striking wood. My skin prickled, and a cold wave ran through me. Whatever was under that tree, it wasn't just dirt. The hollow sound seemed to linger in the air long after it should have faded, making my ears buzz with unease. Grandpa stayed frozen, one hand gripping the shovel, the other resting on his knee, his head slightly bent as if he were listening to something whisper from beneath the ground. I couldn't stand the silence any longer. I slipped on my boots and eased the front door open, the hinges groaning just enough to make him turn. The moonlight caught his face, and my stomach lurched. His eyes looked glassy, unfocused, as though he'd been pulled halfway out of himself. "Go back inside," he rasped, his voice low but carrying an edge that made me hesitate. He turned back to the hole and began digging again, faster this time, until the shovel hit that hollow object once more. Dropping to his knees, he brushed the dirt away with his hands, revealing the edge of an old, rotting wooden box. The smell hit me before I could even process what I was seeing: damp earth, mold, and something faintly metallic and sharp. Grandpa's breathing grew uneven as he pried the box open, the hinges snapping after decades underground. Inside was cloth. At least, I thought it was cloth, until I noticed the dark stains and the way it seemed to cling to itself, stiff with age. There was something heavy wrapped inside, and when Grandpa reached for it, I instinctively stepped back, a chill crawling up my spine. Whatever had been buried here, it had been meant to stay hidden. Grandpa's hands trembled as he pulled the bundle from the box, the rotted cloth flaking away in his grip. A heavy thud echoed in the still night when he set it on the ground, and for a second, I thought I saw the shape inside shift. My mouth went dry. He knelt there, fingers working at the knotted fabric with an urgency that didn't match his frail frame, and when the last fold came loose, the moonlight revealed something that made my skin crawl: an old, rusted trap, its jagged jaws crusted with a dark residue that didn't look like rust. Etched into the steel were strange markings, almost like runes, worn down but still visible. Grandpa stared at it with a mix of fear and reverence, his lips moving silently as if reciting something he'd memorized long ago. Then, without warning, he looked up at me, his eyes wide and wild. "It's awake again," he whispered. I wanted to ask what he meant, but before I could, the trap snapped shut by itself, the sound sharp and violent in the quiet air. Grandpa flinched, then scrambled to wrap it back in the cloth, his voice shaking. "It can hear us now," he said, glancing over his shoulder toward the tree line. I followed his gaze, and for the first time, I noticed the forest didn't look still anymore. The shadows seemed to sway, even though no wind was blowing. The air felt heavier, like the night itself was pressing against my skin. Grandpa shoved the bundle back into the box, his hands moving clumsily as if every second mattered. "Help me bury it," he barked, but before I could move, something in the tree line shifted again, not just the shadows this time, but shapes. Dozens of them. Tall, thin silhouettes stepping forward in unison, their movements unnatural, like marionettes pulled by invisible strings. My chest tightened as I realized they weren't stepping on the ground so much as gliding over it, their faces pale slivers in the moonlight, eyes wide and unblinking. Grandpa's voice cracked as he muttered something under his breath, a chant I couldn't understand, each word tumbling out faster. The shapes stopped just at the edge of the clearing, as if some invisible line held them back. One of them leaned forward, its head twitching in quick, jerky motions, and a sound like metal grinding on bone spilled from its mouth. The trap inside the box rattled violently, as though trying to break free. "We're out of time," Grandpa hissed, grabbing my arm. He tossed the shovel aside, grabbed the box, and dragged me toward the house. Behind us, The shapes didn't follow, but I could feel their eyes locked on us, even as the door slammed shut. Grandpa leaned against the wall, sweat running down his face. "If it calls again," he said, staring at the floor, "we won't be able to stop it." And somewhere out there, in the quiet between the trees, I swear I heard the trap snap shut one last time.